All right. Thank you everyone for joining us. For some reason, GoToWebinar cameras aren't working. I do want you to see my face, but it doesn't seem to be working, so you'll just have to deal with my picture instead. Um, Rob, thank you. That was a great keynote. Rob has been, well, we've been connected now for a little over a year, and he's a great follow on LinkedIn too. So if you're looking for good content, regular content, pragmatic content, Rob is definitely your guy. So today I'm going to cover sort of the multi-cloud or hybrid cloud journey and some of the sort of salient points that we want to bring out in this 2-day session that we have. I'm not going to go super deep into any one topical area. I'll maybe go medium level depth, and then really the sessions that follow me today and tomorrow should provide further detail in some very specific areas. So just briefly, a little bit about me. My name is David Humes. I'm the Vice President of Product Development here at US Signal. I've been with the organization since September of 2023, so nearly 2 years. My background is really in the data center and IT infrastructure space on the solution provider side, and then also spent actually the majority of my career to date as a customer. And so I was actually a customer of another provider like US Signal, purchasing private cloud services, connectivity, and backup. So, in my role leading all things product here at US Signal, one of the things that we're really intentional about is bringing our customers along the journey and indeed involving them in our processes. So that's a little bit about me. There's the QR code. I promise it really goes to my LinkedIn. It's not a fish or anything like that. So would love to connect with anybody who is on here and we're not connected. And then not everybody here knows a lot about US Signal, so I'm just going to give a little snapshot just to, again, tee up some of the discussions that are happening later. US Signal is a company that was actually established in 2001. So it's in the tech industry, it's an old company, I suppose. We've really reinvented ourselves in the last few years, taking the strong points from the business that existed previously and adding in some innovation and other things to really, step into the next phase of the company. Based in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I forgot to mention, I'm based in Duluth, Minnesota. I was actually camping in Michigan last week, though. It was great. We view our two core competencies as a business really as connectivity. So think the fiber network and the Cato SASE platforms, and then the data centers, the data centers that we own, and then the services that we can deliver to customers, inside those data centers to the external world. And then we think about our business as those two cores with the one-step adjacencies of security, managed services, and cloud services. Obviously, the session today and tomorrow is really heavily focused on cloud services. But the key thing here is we try not to be everything to everybody. We try to be really good at the things we do. And indeed, I think you'll hear from some of our customers. We're really proud of really high customer satisfaction. Today, we have 16 data centers across the country. We have 2 edge data centers. They're expansions of existing facilities under construction, as well as 8 micro data centers along our fiber routes, which will help provide the future of AI inference and low latency connectivity to our customers. Today, have 9,500 miles of fiber with another 1,000 under construction, which is super exciting. The fiber network hasn't been expanded that way in quite a while. And the combined entity of US Signal and OneNeck brings around 3,000 customers across the United States. As it relates to the Cloud Advantage Summit, we really view the world as multi-cloud or hybrid. And so when we think about our hosting platforms that we support, it's of course OpenCloud, which you've probably all heard of, which is based on open source tools like KVM and CloudStack for multi-tenant infrastructure hosting. We also have LodoCloud, which is Nutanix hosting. We're one of the largest Nutanix providers in the United States. And then today we support Microsoft Azure, which we'll actually hear from a customer of ours on their journey there today. And then, last but not least, I would be remiss to not mention that we have our TOC, or our Technical Operations Center, staffed 24/7, and our customers love the experience they get there. So just some salient points. And again, I'm really trying to tee up the discussions that will happen later on in the day today and tomorrow. But I just want to sort of set the ground rules from our perspective, at least. And these are some beliefs, and maybe not everybody believes this, but this is really what we tend to believe as a general point. And Rob made some of these points already, but just to reinforce them, we believe strongly as a table stakes thing that it's all about business value first. Sometimes we forget when we're in the infrastructure space that our job is really to deliver applications to customers, to the people that are using them. And yes, that uses infrastructure, but we have to view it through an app first focus. So the infrastructure that runs those apps should live in the most optimal place for the org. Rob threw out some stats like 78% of organizations use 3 or more public clouds, 54% deploy apps in hybrid deployments. So it's not just like a belief we have. I mean, I think this is a reflection of the world we live in. But I think we're a little unique in the data center space in that we actually believe this, and we strategy and services wise back this up, which is a little bit different than maybe some of our competitors. Um, Other salient point, again, Rob kind of made this, but you're going to see this driven home over the next 2 days. We really believe that open source is the future in this digital infrastructure space. We think that open source offers long-term stability because, again, they're not, at the behest of an organization. It's really the community that helps drive open source. We think that cost control is particularly important in the environment we live today. It always has been, but I think a magnifying glass has been put on cost control. And then I think what's honestly for me of all things with open source is the source for innovation. So think agentic AI and inference. So one thing that one of the reasons we chose Cloud Stack for OpenCloud is we believe that we could adapt and innovate more quickly by adopting open source. So to just give you a real world example of this, when we chose Cloud Stack, it did not have native GPU functionality as a first-class citizen in the multi-tenant model. It supported GPUs as a single tenant, not multi-tenant. We actually worked and sponsored a project to add this functionality to the open source project, so it's not specific to us. We kicked that project off with our partner ShapeBlue. It was like April or May of this year, and the 4.21 release of Cloud Stack, which is coming out, I don't know, it might be out already. It was like this week or next. Is going to add that capability. So in the span of just a few months, we were able to add some pretty awesome feature sets that again really go for our customers. So those are all the reasons that we chose to support or we chose open source. I think Rob mentioned that open source has been used by enterprise organizations for a long time. It was like 89% app deployments use open source. It's not something new. I think what is new is using it for underlying virtualization platforms. That hasn't been as common. And you'll hear from Rebecca Weekly at Geico tomorrow, who will talk about their journey as well. But we love open source, and I think open source is the future. But I still think there's really good reasons why commercial virtualization platforms and other commercial tools in general will persist and will be a part and should be a part of our vernacular. And really, I think it comes down to 2 pretty simple things. I think there's commercial application platforms, think like Epic, for example, EHR platform, where the vendor is going to require certain underlying technology for them to provide support. And so I think we'll see that. I think that will adapt over time, but I still think that will be pretty persistent. And then I think there's certainly industries or verticals that just aren't going to have the propensity. So even though we're really excited about OpenCloud, what we're still really excited about is we have Nutanix as our commercial virtualization platform. For those that don't know, via the OneNeck acquisition, we're one of the largest Nutanix hosting providers in the United States, but historically that has been on single tenant deployments only. No multi-tenancy was available. What you're going to hear during a later session with Nutanix is the capability that they're bringing to market. So we're really excited about that because, again, although we think OpenCloud's great, we still think there's going to be customers where Nutanix is going to make the most sense. And then the last thing here, which again, I think is table stakes personally, but I don't know that all of our competitors maybe view it this way. And that's really this idea that we view hyperscalers as friends and not enemies. So we believe that the hyperscalers like AWS or Azure, they simply excel at things like platform services and worldwide deployments that, in general, we don't have that capability for. So we think there's workloads that certainly are best in the public cloud providers. But again, what we're going to do is we're going to allow customers to choose their own adventure. We've already got customers who are looking at hybrid deployments of applications in both OpenCloud and Azure, where it makes the most sense for that deployment. And then there's an asterisk next to past services and worldwide reach because we will build this, but it's going to really be based on the customer and what the need is. We're probably never going to have hundreds of platform options when you log into OpenCloud, but we might have 50, the 50 that you all care about. So again, those are the salient points. The sessions later will hopefully drive all these home and provide some more detail. But that's really what we believe. So I talked about what we believe, which is interesting, but I think it always is better hearing it from a customer. So we actually have a slide in our OpenCloud pitch deck that our sales team uses, and it actually references a customer not by name, but just by what they're doing with us. And I considered going through that, but instead I thought, hey, maybe it made sense to actually just bring the customer on. So just to share a little primer for my introduction to Jeff, there's this is a LinkedIn post that Michael Dell made. As you all know, he's the founder and CEO of Dell. Um, the stat was 83% of enterprises plan to move workloads back to private cloud from a public cloud. So it doesn't mean they're moving everything. It just means they're moving some things. And so I thought it made sense to not just hear it from me or Rob from an industry perspective, but actually hear it from a customer. So with that said, I'd like to introduce Jeff Loetel. Jeff is the managing member of LodoCloud. He's been the managing member of LodoCloud for about 10 years. They're a managed service provider in Colorado. And by way of the OneNeck acquisition, they've been a customer of US Signal for several years, I think about 5. But historically have been purchasing Azure services through us via the CSP. So we've been acting as their CSP for Azure. And Jeff will tell the story, but they're heavy and satisfied with Azure, but didn't need all the bells and whistles of Azure, and certainly didn't need the cost, which was a major sticking point for them. So they chose to bring certain workloads for their customers back to OpenCloud in order to save cost and really optimize performance. So Jeff, I'll hand it over to you if you want to just do a brief introduction, provide some background of yourself, and then maybe an overview of LodoCloud and your business today.
Sure. So I started off in software development many years ago, worked for several different government agencies, did a little bit of genetic research. It's more of my background, my education background. And as we kind of move through the last 10 years, what we have found with Azure is, as has been described here, a very versatile, well-developed platform. We've seen it mature in many different ways, and we have several clients that have very specific needs. They have military contracts, they have city, state, municipal contracts, but we also have a smaller base, a smaller mid-sized organization that have the same needs. They may not be quite to the extent of the needs of some of the other entities. And as has also been discussed here, it comes down to cost. It comes down to listening to the customer. So as we have evolved over the last 10 years, working towards stability, working towards economies of scale, Azure met those needs, and we're extremely happy with it. We're extremely happy with what it does. There's definitely some learning curve to get through from an Azure, and that's where again we've partnered up with US Signal as our CSP to help guide us and coach us through some of the nuances, some of the more specific things. So when it comes down to it, we moved to migrate Azure. It was about 6 to 7 years ago. Very happy with it. We've been very happy with it, but times have changed. The times will always change. And having been come from a Linux-based, Unix-based, Solaris person way back when, we're certainly open to, and I've certainly been open to open source solutions. So as we started working with US Signal more and more, and have discussions with our counterparts inside of US Signal, it comes down to listening to our clients and listening to the needs and the pain of price. We see price increases all the time. Some of them can be mitigated, some of them can be managed. Where it comes down to a little bit is that the amount of time that we find that we have to really understand the licensing, the registration, the reservations, that type of thing. We could not do that with the staffing that we have. So we certainly reach out to US Signal to help guide us and coach us through a lot of that to get to really squeeze out a lot of the benefit that we can to keep costs down, because costs, from our perspective, are extremely important to ensuring that our customers are happy. So through that process, through ongoing discussions on how we can reduce costs, how we can really make sure that we are competitive within our marketplace, we came along and did some evaluation of OpenCloud. What we have found is that it really works for us in many, many different cases, in many, many different circumstances. It gives us it does integrate with Azure. We're extremely happy about that. The single pane of glass that will be using is very intuitive. It's very straightforward. So what we have found is, again, we have to look towards solutions that meet the marketplace that customer, that client of ours may be engaged in, finding the correct solution for them, providing and delivering that. Again, certainly open to continuing to use Azure, where some of the more rigid restrictions may be, some of the larger scale implementations may be, but we are moving some clients over that do have GPU, and so that's kind of slated later this year from a migration standpoint.
That's great. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, when Jeff and I were talking a couple weeks ago, just as our prep or lead up to this discussion, I've never bought an airplane before, and not in the market, but you buy an airplane for your mission, and so I think Jeff, what you've described is really, truly, and actually in the real world, understanding the needs of your customer and choosing the right place for them, and I think you're in an interesting position as a solution provider because you used to be reselling the Azure cloud, now it's Open Cloud plus Azure. And so, I think part of your job, and honestly, I think part of our job, is to look out for the best interests of our customers to, make sure that, because they don't know any better, right? And so they're
Correct.
looking to help them understand it.
That's correct. Yeah, they certainly look to us for guidance as we look to the larger innovators such as US Signal, and they look to us for that guidance. They don't have the expertise, they don't have the time to invest in it. So that's really where our diligence pays off. That's where we look towards US Signal for guidance and some of the larger things, the more that are taking place within the sphere, to really kind of make sure that we're all competitive from a cost standpoint, because fundamentally it's about the economics, and we have to make sure that everybody is working within the best margin and therefore providing a solution within that best margin.
Yeah, yeah. Jeff, can you give me a sense, just like from your customer application profile? I'm certain it's varied, but what types of applications or workloads did you find made the most sense in Open Cloud versus what maybe used to live in Azure?
So when it comes down to it, a lot of the applications, so most of the applications that our clients support, they run and operate on SQL databases. They run on the standard business style applications. So when it comes down to a lot of what we do, we have found that if they have a very common stack, there's nothing unusual about it. It runs on a SQL database. It is your standard 365 plus, some other applications, different types of things like that. There are some applications out there that are used by large scale organizations. We have contracting some clients that do consulting and contract work, large scale development in the commercial build. So they build airlines. They build, excuse me, not airlines, but airports, they build hospitals, embassies, different types of things like that. So in that particular setting, that where the requirements are extremely high from a security standpoint, those tend to be ones that we are doing the heavy evaluation. Does it make sense to pull them over because of the either level of security? Does it make sense because of the loads that would be placed upon it? So we're still going through some of the discovery on that and going through the preparation on that. But what we have found is if the stack is fairly common, the applications are fairly common, industry standard stuff that runs on your standard tool sets, we found that OpenCloud is definitely the best solution for that.
Awesome, awesome. So, couple of maybe closing-ish questions, Jeff. You mentioned looking at GPU workloads, and I mentioned earlier that that is a solution that we're going to be bringing to market yet this year. We're also looking at Kubernetes support within it's native actually in Cloud Stack. We're looking at some other options, and we'll be bringing Ampere ARM CPUs to market, but what are you looking at going forward? Maybe not just for OpenCloud, but just in general for your business.
Really, what it comes down to it is a single panes of glass, extremely important to us. Economies of scale, the ability to just really tailor a cost-effective solution to our clients. We've seen the price of as everything moved towards subscription based, we've seen that the price points on everything actually has really kind of gone up. And so it comes down to all of those key things, all of the basic stuff, which is understanding where the margins are, understanding where the price points are, understanding how we can deliver an economical solution, how we can have panes of glass that allow us to manage efficiently so that we don't get overburdened with manpower or have to give away part of our margin due to having to load on more and more staff. So it really kind of comes down to all the basics, all the fundamentals moving forward to just really, really focus on those things because that's where the margins are.
That's great. Well, Jeff, I just want to offer any further closing thoughts from your point of view.
Again, we've I think the best thing, the only thing I can really say is that we do appreciate the additional offering, right? We do appreciate the open cloud as a solution because whereas Azure does have all the bells and whistles, it is extremely difficult, to at times for smaller organizations to get what they need. So us having an ability to do a migration, to work with US Signal for that migration, to get to some of our clients that really feel the price points. Their markets are constantly changing, so we have to change and adjust with them. So it is extremely important to us with the partnership that we have with US Signal to look towards those solutions, have those solutions available. If we were locked into one model, one Azure model, we're really kind of constrained, and that really has barriers to market for us and barriers to growth for us. And we need various solutions. And so US Signal providing the open cloud as a solution, as an additional tool in the toolbox, is extremely important to us to stay financially viable within our market space.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Jeff. I mean, when I think about the last 18 months, you're obviously coming from the Azure perspective. We have a lot of customers, both current customers on VMware platforms that we host, as well as others who I think maybe, were not single threaded in any singular area in their app stack, but then, all the VMware changes happened. And I think we maybe took it for granted and, didn't have multiple options. And I think that's what one of the things that I think is exciting about Open Cloud. To your point, it's an and equation, not an or. We're not saying you need to leave Azure. So I think that's
Correct.
really one other point you made was that you work with us because of the Azure expertise and the ability to help navigate. You probably don't know this, but I'll share an anecdote. One of our largest customers is a $5 billion manufacturer who does their CSP with us, and we do managed services. And even they have challenges with what that is, right? And so they choose us to help guide them through that process and make the most efficient use of the resources. So it's not just on the small scale. I think it's really on the continuum of customers. So, well, Jeff, I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you for making the time. I know it's a little bit early in Colorado. I appreciate you as a customer, and I'm personally looking forward to working with you going forward.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. I do appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff.
Bye bye.
All right. Well, Jeff is an individual who I've gotten to know a little bit over the last few weeks, and I'm again really interested in getting to work with him more. What's coming up after our session here is you'll have Pat Cannon and Jim Schuyler. Jim may be one of my favorite people in the world, just for the record, and they're going to be talking about the OpenCloud Advantage. So really the features, advantages, benefits, and then I think Jim is actually going to show you guys the platform. So again, Pat is our field CTO, and Jim Schuyler is one of our solution architects out of Grand Rapids. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I appreciate it.